So we're gonna work on a little bit of shoulder work today that specifically relates to press handstands, but also feeling like you trust your shoulder strength enough to hold you up when you're doing a handstand. I think a lot of fear in handstands comes from just not trusting your body to hold you up. So it's going to be partially that and also partially press handstand training. And the cool thing about press handstand training is that you don't need to be off the wall in order to start training your press. And that is a very common misconception that happens in a lot of people's brains that are like, oh, the press seems completely impossible, therefore I'm not going to try ever. But even if you don't know how to balance a handstand, I will share a little story that I actually learned how to press up before I even learned how to balance a handstand. So if that helps eliminate any self-doubt thoughts about training press handstands, you can, hey Nikita, you can allow that to instill confidence in your press handstand training. So make sure you have just a little bit of wall space today. If you need to clear something away. If you don't have wall space, there are some things we can do with your feet on a chair or a bed or a couch or something like that. We are also going to make use of bed space / couch space as well. So if you are able to make something like that available for yourself, and if you don't have something like that available for yourself, we can figure it out. Feel free to wave at me and be like, I don't have the proper thing, and I'll help you brainstorm and figure it out. Having a couple yoga blocks handy is great too, and also you don't necessarily need it. And I also like to have a strap or band nearby always for some shoulder work, but you also, again, don't need it. So don't stress if you don't have the proper tools. All right, we're gonna do 1 minute of cardio just to get our blood moving. Even though it's hot, you still need to get some circulation. So I'm setting a timer, pressing start, and feel free to get on up and jump up and down. You can do jumping jacks, you can do anything cardio related. "25 more seconds. Keep breathing." Three, two, one, and stop. Come down to the ground and wrist circles. It's pretty much a rule of thumb for me to always do some wrist circles before some handstand training. If you're just gonna do one handstand and you have healthy wrists, go for it. If you're gonna do maybe 10 minutes or more of handstand training, I highly recommend working in a few minutes of wrist conditioning. And switch directions with your circles. And if there's a spot where you roll over it and you need a little bit more attention there, feel free to iron it out a little. All right, 25 wrist push-ups. If you already know what I'm talking about, go ahead and start. Otherwise, bring your shoulders forward over your fingers. That's really key in order to actually make any progress in this exercise. And then push really hard into your knuckles to lift your palms, and then really resist gravity on the way down. Make it hard on the way down. And then you can add speed. If this is really easy, bring your knees back and make sure your shoulders stay forward. Otherwise, you're not really getting the full benefit of the exercise. If you lost count, just do 5 more or so. Your forearm should feel tired. Good, and then take your fingers back to face your knees. Just feel a little bit of relief in the forearms. You don't want to stretch super, super deep right now. So we're not going for flexibility, we're just going for a little bit of relief. And take another deep breath here. And then one more set of 25 wrist push-ups. This is such an important exercise, that's why we're doing it again. Shoulders forward over fingers, 25. Remember, resist on the way down, make it hard on the way down. Once you've done 25, fingers back to face your knees, a little bit of relief, stretch out your forearms. Good, shake it out. And just briefly waking up the other side of your forearm, take the back of your hand to the ground, fingers facing each other, and then push into your knuckles to close your fists. If you're on hardwood floor and you have sensitive knuckles, you can take like a towel or blanket or something like that and give yourself a little bit of padding. And this is not a super, super weight bearing drill. You don't necessarily need to add a lot of weight here. It's more just about activating the top side of your forearm just a little. All right, and then we'll stretch it out. So take your back of the hand to the ground, soften your elbows enough that you can close your fists completely. So back of the hand on the ground, close your fists, and then see if you can straighten your elbows from there. If you can't straighten them, that's okay. You've got flexibility, growth potential. And shake it out. If you happen to have a strap or band, or what I'm using is my bathrobe belt, if you don't have anything that's like this, you can just do shoulder circles and that's fine. We're just trying to get the joint to loosen up, but I really, really like to do it with a strap. So to do it with a strap, you have the strap between your thumb and your pointer finger with your palms facing away from you, not towards you. And then take the strap over your head and see if you can do it with your hands just wide enough that you don't need to bend your elbows and you don't need to do like a one shoulder at a time kind of thing. We're doing 25 of these dislocates. And it shouldn't feel like a super, super deep stretch. It should just feel like your shoulders are getting a little bit of mobility, a little bit of movement, circulation to the joint, just warming it up. And notice if your ribs pop forward when you bring your arms back. See if you can keep your ribs down. So you're really just isolating the shoulder joint and not bending your back. This is another thing I do pretty much in between my warm-up of my handstand sets. If this feels good, you can even bring your hands slightly closer together, and again, as long as you don't have to kind of like wiggle through or bend your elbows, you can do that. Good. Toss that off to the side. Okay. So we're gonna do, so focusing a little bit on shoulders. Some of you will recognize this posture as puppy dog pose, but what we're gonna do is something a little bit more particular, where you keep your hips back, you walk your hands as far forward as you can so that you're really extending through the shoulder joint, and make sure there's external rotation, and I'll clarify what external rotation means in a moment. But we're gonna extend through the shoulders and drop the chest, and then press through the hands and pull your ribs in. So it's an arch and a hollow, while being really, really reachy through the arms and extending through the shoulders a lot. So we're gonna do 20 of those arch and hollows. What I mean by external rotation is you wanna think about the shoulder joint rolling outward, so as if you could turn your thumbs up. So you're not actually going to turn your thumbs up. See how my palms stay flat? But I'm thinking about rotating my elbows and shoulders in that direction as if my thumbs turn up. So go ahead and start doing 20 of those puppy dog arch and hollows. And extend through the shoulder, externally rotate through the shoulder joint. And you want to feel a little stretch in the shoulder when you arch and a little engagement through the shoulder when you hollow. And another thing I want to add for people who have really flexible shoulders, if this feels like nothing, what you can do is put your hands either on blocks or on like a, maybe even like a coffee table or a regular table. If you don't have blocks, you can do the same thing. Drop your chest, arch, and hollow, pressing through the hands. That's for those of you with really bendy shoulders. Yeah. Good. Once you think you've done 20, I think that's the number I said, you can sit back up so I know you're done. Good. All right, so next one, we're gonna do 20 of this T-shape arm lift. So you wanna think like engaging, so you're not like lifting your head, your chin can stay on the ground. You wanna engage the back of your shoulders to lift your arms and see how high you can lift them. It's about engaging the back side of your body. So we're gonna do 20 of those, and after you've done 20 of those, you're gonna take your arms forward and do the same thing with thumbs up. So you wanna think thumbs up, and you can put your chin on the ground so that you're not really using your head. Yeah, go ahead and start. 20 out to the side, and 20 overhead, thumbs up. Looks good. Good. So when you're done with that, you can sit back up. So we're gonna do one more exercise that helps you to close the shoulder joint, and we're gonna do another one to help open it in a moment. But just to clarify what I mean by open and close, open shoulders is when your arms are behind your head, and closed shoulders are when your arms, I'll go a little bit. Open shoulders are when your arms are behind your head, closed shoulders are when your arms are in front of your head, and then you're neutral when your arms are just like in line with your body. So that's just a little bit of vocabulary. So strength training to help close your shoulders. We're gonna go from a normal plank to walking your hands a little bit farther out, and then hold this really, really hard plank position, and then walk your hands back in. This is a pretty hard drill. If it's really hard, you can bring your arms, your knees to the ground, but that's kind of a little similar to that puppy exercise we did before. If it's too hard, you could just do one step forward and then one step back. So we're gonna do 5 of those forward and back. So stepping back, forward and back is 1. So it's kind of like 10, if that makes sense. So go ahead and start plank, take a step forward, keep your ribs pulled in, take a step back. Sweet. All right, so now that your shoulders are strong in this direction, now we're going to strengthen the shoulders in the other direction. And something I want to share to explain why we're doing this is because this might be for some of you like a later on thing, but I just want it to make sense in our brains. So when you're doing a press handstand, notice how I do have to plunge in order to initiate the press. But then notice once I get my feet off the ground, if I don't open my shoulders, I'm stuck. Notice how once my feet are off the ground, if I open my shoulders, then my legs can lift the rest of the way. Does that make sense? So I have to kind of like force my chest open. I have to force myself to get out of that plunge and into that open shoulder position. So to do that, we're gonna do it in a much easier way than what I just did. So what you're gonna do is start with your hands on like a couch, or for me, it's my bed. And what I'm gonna do is push my hands into my bed to lift my back off the floor. And I'll try and show it from the side. It's a little weird from the side. But push my back off the ground and then come back down. And it's not about how high your back gets off the ground. It's more just about building the strength to push your arms back. So make it a little farther from the chair. So start with like, yeah, back on the ground, head on the ground, arms back on something like a chair or bed or couch. And then yes, that's it. So Johanna, keep your hips on the ground. It's just your back. Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. Good. Yeah, this is so good. And I don't think I said how many we're doing. Let's do 10. If you weren't counting, don't worry about it. Yes. And keep extending through the shoulder. Cool. Feel free to give me a thumbs up if that was like kind of hard. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's a little hard. So this is actually a really good, it's good like information to find out where your body is strong. Maybe you're really strong in the closed shoulder position but don't have a lot of strength to open your shoulders. So now we're going to kind of put that in action upside down. If you don't have wall space, you can put your feet up on something like, I do recommend more like bed height, like bed on like at hip height kind of bed. This is like a low bed, which makes it so that you need more flexibility in order to do this exercise. So if you have hamstring flexibility, you could do it on something short like a bed, but if you have wall space, that's a little bit more ideal. So what we're gonna do is take our feet to the wall, and if you have enough space to do a little bit of a straddle, it helps to give you more space. If you need to do it in a pike, that's also fine. We're gonna play around with going to open shoulders and then closed shoulders. Open shoulders, closed shoulders. Open shoulders, closed shoulders. Does that make sense? You can give me a thumbs up if that makes sense.
Lana, it was a little hard to hear you at the beginning. Can you just talk us through, I at least heard the ending part, but not the beginning. Can you just talk us through your foot place, maybe your foot placement?
Yeah, so you want your feet kind of like hip height. You can have your feet together if you don't have enough wall space to have a straddle. A straddle is a little bit more ideal. And then we're trying to get shoulders closed, shoulders open, shoulders closed, shoulders open, if that makes sense. The lower your feet are to the ground, the harder this is gonna be. But you can challenge yourself to make this harder by bringing your feet lower to the ground and doing the same thing. It just requires a little bit more flexibility and strength. So let's do 10 of these arches and hollows. So it's kind of like that same puppy exercise that we did before, except upside down. Yeah. And try and keep the hollow if you can. Try not to like let your lower back arch. See if you can keep your lower belly pulled in a little bit more. Yes, nice, Jen, that looks better. Yeah. This is a really good drill for shoulder strength, shoulder flexibility, shoulder stability, and also just body awareness of what is closed and what is open in your shoulders, or what it means to have closed versus open shoulders. So this is a really good drill. Yeah, cool. So feel free to come back down for a moment. So that was a lot of shoulder work. So now we're going to focus a little bit more on the core. If you're on wood floor, you can grab either a yoga mat, or today I'm just going to use a towel. We're going to do our usual plow negatives. If you don't know what that is, I'll explain. So the reason I'm using a towel is just because the spine on the floor can sometimes be a little bit painful. If you're a little masochistic, whatever, go for it. All right, level 1 is arms by your sides, lifting your hips, legs straight, and then lowering slow to the ground. And see if you can keep your legs as close to your face as possible, because then you're really using your hip flexors also. Level 2 is arms above your head, same thing, because then you're not really using your hands on the ground. Level 3 is a 90-degree bend in your knees. And level 4 is heels all the way to butt. And see if you can, it doesn't have to be super slow, but see if you can control the entire range of motion so that you don't end up like dropping really hard onto your hips at any point. And if you are dropping really hard on your hips, see if you can either straighten your legs or use your hands on the ground to just slow down that plow negative. Yeah. And I don't think I said a number, but let's do 20 of these. This is another really, really good drill for press handstands, because when you press, you're not only using the flange of your shoulders and lifting your legs, but you're also rolling through your spine in this same kind of way. You guys are killing it. Some of you are done, some of you are still going. If you're not counting and you're still going, you can just sit back up and we will move on. All right, one more little thing to kind of pull together. So hollow body hops or press walks. So we just did a lot of core work, we did a lot of shoulder work. So now we're gonna put that together. The hollow body hops, this is a really, really great drill, and I've been doing it like every single week because it's so great. I do hollow body hops pretty much every single time I train. You want to think about bringing your shoulders forward over your fingers and then pull your ribs in and then extend through the shoulder. That's really important. Make sure that even though your shoulders are forward and your ribs are in, if you're not extending, you're not really getting everything out of it. And then when you hop your feet back, you can bend your knees a little bit, but see if you can make the bend come from the rounding of your spine rather than the hinging of your shoulder. And that's I'm doing it in a little bit of an exaggerated, so this is the hinge at the shoulder version, and this is the rounding of the spine version. Can everybody tell the difference? I can't quite tell. Yeah, feel free to, yeah, okay, I got a thumbs up. So I'm rounding at the spine, pressing through my hands, and then hopping my feet back, and then same thing, rounding through my spine, hopping my feet forward. Once this gets really strong and sturdy, you can start to kind of slide your feet forward and back, or you can press your feet forward and back. So that's kind of like the levels of your hollow body hops. Let's do 20, and that's really hard. So each hop forward and back counts as 1. And if you need to take breaks, if you need to do like 2 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 5 or something like that, feel free. If your wrists get tired, you can squat with your wrist between your knee creases to give yourself a little bit of decompression in your wrist joint. Yeah, and if you're doing the slidey version, you can either put socks on or you can put like a blanket or a paper plate or something like that underneath your feet to make your feet a little bit more slidey. And remember that shoulder extension and rounding through your spine rather than hinging at the shoulder. Everybody's looking so good. I don't even have anything really to say. You guys are keeping that extension. You're keeping the hollow in your ribs. You're not hinging too much at the shoulders. Yeah, I see a lot of sliding going on. If you're getting tired, that is normal. Make sure you breathe.
Lana,
Yeah.
I sometimes get pain like in my hand. Do you have anything you recommend for strengthening like areas near your like proper metatarsals?
So something that I've done to like help give relief to it is if it's coming from like the underside of the palm, I'll take my elbow and kind of like dig into whatever's in there. But if it's coming from the top side of the hand, this is something that is a little bit outside of my exact, like kind of like almost like PT kind of knowledge, but something that I do sometimes is I'll kind of just like run my thumbs between my bones and just kind of feel for the soft part in there. And sometimes there's like little muscles, and this might also be a good question for Jen because she's a massage therapist, but I kind of like I like feel around for anything that feels tender, and I'll usually kind of just like run my thumb along it really like kind of softly. I'm not like digging in super hard, but that's kind of something that I've found that helps give a little bit of relief for like tightness that happens inside the palm. Yeah, Jen, if you wanted it.
You can also, it's really sweet to just roll a tennis ball over, and then you can control the pressure. That's a great way to do self-massage for the hand too. You can also use, sit on your hands, palms face down, in like an easy pose, and give yourself a massage on the top of your hands that way too. Yeah. Thank you. Very nice.
Yeah. Ooh, that's
just
cool.
Gotta roll around. Fingers too.
Right.
Lovely.
Putting the heel actually is kind of cool too. This is like almost like the same shape as a tennis ball, like if you don't have a tennis ball. Anyway, this is, I just made that up, a little experiment.
Yeah. Use your body parts to massage your body parts.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, I would say, wiggle around in there, see if that gives a little bit of relief. I don't necessarily do a lot of like strengthening the inside of the things, but something that rock climbers do is they'll put their hands into buckets of rice and open their hands. If you want like something that's like strength building, you can also do this exercise. Also strengthens the top side of the wrist. Anyway, this is kind of food for thought to kind of like give you some ideas, but yeah. Cool. So now let's work on hip flexors and glutes, which is also really important. When your glutes are really strong and really firing, it makes your like kicking up to handstand much more strong. If your glute is firing, it makes your top leg stronger. If your hip flexors are really strong, it makes your compression really good. Notice how I have to drag my feet towards my hands in order to lift my legs. So that is mostly, well, I mean, in addition to shoulder strength and core strength, it's also hip flexor compression. So we're going to work on those things. First, we're going to fire up the glutes. So to do that, you want to think hollow, and then squeeze your butt, extend your back, one of your legs. We're going to do both, doesn't matter which one. Think hollow, try not to let your lower back arch. Hollow, and we're going to do 20 heel drives, squeezing your butt. And be really honest with yourself. If your lower back arches at all, you're not really getting the full benefit of this exercise. So think lower belly pulls in, hollow, squeeze your butt. Once you've done 20 on one side, other side, hollow, squeeze your butt, lift your leg. And also make sure that your hip doesn't open. Try and make sure both hips are level. Yeah. Good. Once you've completed 20 on that side, come down to a straddle. So hip flexor workouts are oftentimes my least favorite things to train, and it's like some of the unglamorous work that makes your handstand better, but sometimes you just gotta do it even though it sucks. So we're gonna take both hands on either side of one leg and do 10 circles in one direction. If you need to lean back a little bit to get your leg off the ground, that's fine. So 10 circles in one direction. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, squeeze your knee, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, switch directions, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hold at the top for 10, 9, I know it sucks, 8, 7, 6, 5, squeeze your knee, 4, 3, 2, 1, if it cramped, punch it. Sometimes it's the thigh that cramps, sometimes it's a hip flexor, and eventually once you get stronger, for example, I don't cramp anymore when I do this unless I'm like dehydrated or something like that. All right, other side, 10 circles, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and other direction, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hold at the top, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and release. Punch it if you need to. Awesome. Okay, so now we're gonna bring legs together and do a similar thing. Easier variation is hands back behind you, lift your legs. Harder variation is hands by your thighs, lift your legs. Even harder than that is hands out front, lift your legs. We're gonna try for 10 of these leg lifts together. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice job, you guys. All right, one more little core workout. This is a little bit easier to do with blocks underneath your hands. This is also something you can do on like handstand canes, or you can put like a chair on either side of you if you really need a lot of support. I'm gonna show the block variation. Block variation is pressing your arms straight and then dragging your feet back and your hips up and then coming back. The variation without blocks, it's a little harder because you don't have as much room to get your hip back. It's sliding your hips back from here. So we're gonna do 10, attempt 10 of those. If you can't do all 10, it's fine. Hands down, notice how my hands are not back here. My hands are on either sides of my hips, and then once my feet come back, my hands are kind of closer towards my knees almost, or arms closer to my knees. So go ahead and start. We're gonna do 10, hips back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Awesome. Killing it. So it's pretty amazing how much handstand training we can do without actually even really doing a handstand. Like, we haven't even really done many actual handstands today. But your handstand will be so much better once your body is stronger in all of these other ways. All right, so now handstands. 40 minutes through a class and didn't do handstands yet. All right, so now let's do, I'm gonna have you choose, because we're only gonna do one of these exercises before we start to move on to the circuit. I'm gonna have you choose either, if you're working on your press, you can step to the wall with, you want your hands actually a little bit closer than legs width distance. So not all the way back here, but hands back here towards like mid-thigh, kind of like you just did in the last drill. Bringing your legs out wide to a straddle, and then seeing how slowly you can lower your feet back down to the ground. So I'm gonna, slow as I can, lower my feet to the floor. Were you able to hear me back there? You can give me a thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, so that drill was, just in case you couldn't hear me because I saw somebody do this, you walk your feet up the wall, come and do a little straddle, engage your core, extend through your arms, and then see how slowly you can lower your feet to the ground. That's practicing your negative of your press. Or if you want to work on hops, we're going to do straddle hops. So what that looks like is starting with your hands on the ground, hollow, heels high, bend your knees, make the bend come from your core and not your shoulders, and then hop your legs wide, come back down. Maybe you hop your legs wide and hang out, oops, maybe you go too far, hop your legs wide, hang out in a straddle, and come back down. So do 5 of your choice. Maybe it's 5 straddle hops, or maybe it's walking your feet to the wall and seeing how slowly you can lower your feet down for your straddle negative. Yes. And Dre, for the negative, walk your hands closer to the wall so that you can get your hips to stack over your shoulders. Yeah. And your hips still aren't quite, yeah, there you go. And then slow down. Yes, yeah. Good, and you want to feel your core and your shoulders working a lot on the way down. Something I want to note or make note of for the straddle hops, something that I saw was some of you got, here, I'm going to tilt my screen up a little bit so you can see a little better. Some of you were staying in the closed shoulder position, so hopping, and notice how my shoulders stayed closed. If you hop and then open your shoulders, whoops, that makes it more powerful. Notice how I like went too far because I opened my shoulders a lot, and that helps you follow through with legs up, if that makes sense. So if you're getting stuck in closed shoulders, think close, open. So you really have to like force your shoulders open, and we're gonna do that shoulder opening drill in the circuit so you really get to practice this shoulder opening motion. Okay, so I'm going to explain the circuit. We're going to do all of it 3 times. We're going to do 30 seconds of shoulder flexion against a bed or couch. So 30 seconds of this. And then 1 minute of plow negatives where you're here and you roll down. And then a 30-second rest, and then 30 seconds of straddle hops, and then a 30-second rest. And we're gonna do it all 3 times. So I'll time you guys. The first one is the shoulder flexion. So go ahead and find your bed or couch or chair, whatever you're putting your hands against. Lie on the ground. And 30 seconds starting now. Lift your back off the floor, pushing your hands into that chair or couch or bed, whatever it is. Fifteen more seconds. Stop and just start to make your way into your plow negative. We're not going to necessarily do a break here because that exercise is not like a whole body exercise. So 1 minute of plow negatives starting now. And you can choose how fast or slow you go. And if you're watching the recording and you need a review of the levels, level 1, arms by your sides, legs straight. Level 2, arms overhead, legs straight. Level 3, bending the knees, lowering down. Level 4, heels to butt, lowering down. More seconds. And stop, 30-second rest, and then we're going to set up for handstand straddle hops. Feel free to take a sip of water. Setting up for straddle hops in 3, 2, and 1. And something I didn't mention is if you don't have room to straddle, you can also do the tuck up, which is fine too. Or if you want a challenge, you can do a pike up. And just to show what I mean by that, you can keep your legs together and straight as you hop your legs up. Yeah, good. 5 more seconds. And stop, 30-second rest. And then we'll start round 2. Yeah, if you need a little bit of wrist love, you can squat on your wrists. and then setting up for shoulder flexion exercise. So go ahead and find that chair or couch or bed, lie on your back, and start in 3, 2, and 1, 30 seconds. Yes. Three, 2, 1, and stop. Set up for your plow negative, lying on your back, legs up over your head, and start in 3, 2, and 1. 1 minute. Plow negatives. Twenty more seconds. Breathe. And stop. 30-second rest. Take another sip of water. And then setting up for straddle hops. Starting in 3, 2, and 1. And try and keep the hollow on the way up. So think about using that plow negative that we just worked on. Keep that hollow, and then open your shoulders at the top. Yeah, Leanne. And stop. 30-second rest before we start round 3. And for round 3, we'll start with 30 seconds of shoulder flexion. So you're welcome to set yourself up by your couch or bed or chair, whatever it is. Lie on your back and start in 3, 2, and 1. And stop. And setting up for plow negatives. Lying on your back, bringing your legs over your head. Starting in 3, 2, and 1. 30 more seconds. Keep breathing. Ten more seconds. 3, 2, 1, 30-second rest. And then preparing for 30 seconds of straddle hops. Starting in 3, 2, and 1. Again, keep the hollow and then open your shoulders. Three, 2, 1, and stop. We'll sit in a straddle. Let's do a 1-minute straddle hold. So bring your legs wide, squeeze your knees straight, and fold as far as you can. 1 minute. And having straddle flexibility will help with your handstand practice in the long run. Someday you'll be able to press to a handstand from here. I'm still working on that. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you've been seeing my attempts, I think. And then 1 minute, legs together, forward fold. Squeeze your knees straight, point your toes, and fold. And if you want more of like a nervous system relief, you can drop your head and even put something under your head, like a pillow or a block or something like that. Or just if you're flexible enough to rest your head on your shins, go for it. Sit back up. We'll do a little bit of wrist love, so take your fingers back to face your knees, stretch out your wrists. And only go as far back as you feel a nice stretch. You don't want it to be painful. And then back of the hand on the ground, fingers facing towards your knees. Good. And then if you're on wood floor, I recommend a towel or blanket again for padding. So I learned a new thing actually that I kind of like here. So there's the usual thing where we put our knee on our forearm and mash it out. But new thing that I learned is putting both your knees on the same forearm and separating your knees wide and then bringing your knees together. And what that's doing is it's kind of tractioning your wrist and massaging both the wrist and forearm at the same time, which is kind of cool. I know, right? Somebody did that in the class and I was like, what? Who knew? Who knew this could be even better than it already was? But just be gentle on, this is kind of like, you know, sensitive area, so if you feel like you're pressing on something that doesn't want to be pressed on, then be gentle. And then flip the palm to face down. And when you wiggle your fingers, there's a little muscle on the outside of the forearm that moves. You can kind of pin it with your elbow. I kind of like pull back on it and then I press it down, and sometimes I like to rest my chin on my hand to add more weight. You can even kind of rock your elbow from side to side if that feels good. And then other forearm, palm facing up, you can either do the usual of just mashing with one knee, or you can take both knees and kind of pull your knees wide and then bring your knees together. Only if that feels good. And then palm facing down, wiggle your fingers, look at that muscle that moves and pin it with your other elbow. Drag it towards you and then you can press down. When you feel complete with that, feel free to roll your wrists around a little bit or do any other movements that you need to do in order to feel complete.